This is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam Caplan is here. It is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Caplan, host of the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms and their YouTube channel with great content. Just search Inside the Birds, including Football at 4. Adam Caplan is here. We had a good conversation last week. The 33rd team had the Eagles roster 53, ranked number 2 overall in the entire NFL. So Adam went ahead and ranked them himself based on a myriad of things. I'll let him discuss that as we take a look at Adam's first power rankings of the 2024 offseason. What's going on, Adam Caplan?
Yeah, so Mike, basically what I did is I took our conversation last Friday, and I'm like, I'm not just going to do rosters. Anyone could look at a depth chart. I could get my wife to do it. It's not hard to do. but no, because that's the easiest thing. But do you know about coaching? Do you know about offensive, defensive schemes which are tied into coaching? The roster depth of 32 teams. I look at all that stuff. That's stuff's important to me because that's how you tell, who are the breakout teams. When I had the Lions as my breakout team last season, and I really was high on them the year before, I knew the staff is phenomenal that Dan Campbell put together. They were also a good front office. I'm not really putting the front office rankings in here or adding there because they have nothing to do with the coaching staff or they're not coaching and they're not playing, so they don't have anything to do with it. But it's everything that has to do with on the field. We're talking about the roster, the depth, and the coaching and the schemes and how they're implemented. I cannot tell you how important it is to have a quality coaching staff. Yes, players are number one, but 1A, and believe me, it's really close. You cannot win a Super Bowl without great coaching. You just can't. I don't care what anybody says. This is based on 28 years of covering this business and closely for 25. I've learned my lesson in kind of undervaluing coaching sometimes. Joe Banner, our friend who used to be the Eagles president, Mike, really explained to me in our discussions. I've had hundreds of them with Joe and how important coaching is. And he lived it. He lived it with Andy Reid, a guy who had never even been a coordinator for the Packers, and that was a hell of a hire by Joe. That was Joe and Jeffrey Lurie doing that, and it's not easy to find stuff like that. But leadership and coaching and the value of implementation of schemes and so forth, really, really important.
Yeah, and a lot of these teams, you take a look at what they're going to be this season, how much coaching factors in. We'll take a look at your power rankings. We'll start towards the bottom and work our way up because you look at Buffalo at number 14 on your list, Adam. That's a team, a coaching staff that has been together right there with Sean McDermott, but a lot of changes to that roster.
Well, actually, Mike, he's lost. In fact, remember, he fired his offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, last season, and Joe Brady took over, and Joe Brady kept the job. He named Bobby Babich a first-time defensive coordinator. His dad, Bob Babich, was a linebackers coach for the Bills under McDermott. He retired a couple years ago. Sean's actually gone through a bunch of changes on the staff over the last couple of years, but he's got the quarterback, Josh Allen. Now, the reason why I picked, just so you know, only 14 teams in this ranking, because we now have, since 2020, 7 teams make it on each conference and not 6. So we were up from 12 to 14 teams. So Buffalo, Mike, they're just not as good. You mentioned the roster changes. You're right. They're going to have a completely new starting receiver corps. In fact, the only returning receiver of their top projected players on the roster is Khalil Shakir, who should be their 3. Keon Coleman, their second-round pick, is new. Curtis Samuel is new. Mac Hollins is new, former Eagle. MVS Marquez Valdez-Scantling is new. Chase Claypool is new. They have a completely new wide receiver group here, and that's part of it. Defensively, they don't have a very good pass rush. They're also, Mike, going to have a minimum of 2 new starters in the secondary. Definitely 2 new starting safeties. That's without question. Rasul Douglas, another former Eagle, should be starting at one corner spot. They'll figure it out on the other side. Could be Christian Benford, a former Villanova corner, who started a bit last season. But they're going through a lot of changes, Mike, and there's change in Buffalo. That's why I've got them at 14.
All right, a team that, Super Bowl and then no playoffs with some injuries there for Cincinnati last year. But this is a team that a lot of people still like.
Yeah, I got the Bengals at 13. Joe Burrow is healthy. He's over his wrist injury. That's happened to me. He's had an ACL. This is the thing you worry about is he's missed so much off-season years because of he's come back from injuries. You worry about that, but he's going to have T. Higgins. He's not going anywhere. As I told people in every interview I've had this offseason, I'm like, he's not going to be traded. No one's going to trade for him. They're not going to pay him what he wants. The Bengals don't like trades. They don't like making trades. They finally made a move on Joe Mixon. They want to get younger there at running back, but they just don't like talking to other teams. I'm like, they don't like making trades. They're very old school with Mike Brown, the owner. So when you really look at it, Mike, Zach Taylor's back. Press Taylor's his older brother. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator. Dan Pitcher was their quarterback's coach. Lou Anarumo's back as their D coordinator. Darren Simmons is a really underrated special teams coach is back. You like that. They've got some continuity. Certainly in their coaching staff, but their offensive line's below average. They spent a first-round pick, and Amarius Mims is more of a project. He probably won't start year one. He'll definitely be a future left tackle. That's where he projects to be. He could play either, but he should be a left tackle down the road. But Orlando Brown Jr. is going to be a left tackle. They're not very good inside. They've got some guys who want contract extensions. We mentioned T. Higgins. And then Trey Hendrickson wants his deal done. He's not going anywhere. They're not looking to get worse. He wants more money. They're not. They're going to have. They're revamping their secondary a little bit, Mike. This is going to be a good team. I just don't like that Joe Burrow is missing time. I mean, we're not practicing a lot in the offseason. And by the way, Zach Moss, who was terrific filling in for Jonathan Taylor at running back with the Colts, he's a grinding type back, not explosive, not a playmaker. That's a downgrade from Joe Mixon. I think he's a full-time starter. I think it's crazy. Chase Brown, his brother's out sitting with the Eagles, his twin brother. He'll back him up. But overall, this is a good, not great team. I've got them at 13. They're in, by the way, the best division in the National Football League, the AFC North.
Yes, which is going to be featured on the Hard Knocks, by the way, the entire division. Number 12, this one's interesting. Jacksonville. They're kind of the Eagles of the AFC. Got off to a great start, fell apart, except for they didn't get to the playoffs. And you wonder, if they don't get to the playoffs again, is Dougie P in trouble?
I do. I believe he would be. No question in my mind. Doug was a breath of fresh air. I remember being in their training camp 2 years ago. Urban Meyer, bad experience. I just know that there was like a weight lifted without Meyer, and Doug Peterson is like the opposite of him. He brought in a lot of optimism and calmness, and then they choked, as you said. Doug felt pressure, so he fired pretty much his whole defensive staff. Brought in Ryan Nielsen, who's a really good coordinator. Did a good job with Atlanta. Atlanta didn't have a lot of talent on defense last season. He overachieved. He did a great job. Press Taylor. Now, Press got the offensive play calling. In season, Peterson handed it off. It didn't go well at all, to say the least. That's a problem. That's one thing, Mike. We know what happened in Philly. Why Doug got fired. It wasn't just Press Taylor. It was right up there, but there were other issues, but Press Taylor's among them because he was insistent on Taylor being his offensive coordinator. So you got to watch that. Defensively, again, they're going to have a lot of change. They're not very good in the secondary at all. The offensive line, not bad. Receiver corps has been completely revamped. They're going to have two new starters on the outside. It's a good but not great team. I'm going to believe that Ryan Nielsen, he replaces Mike Caldwell, a former Eagles linebacker and also an assistant coach. I believe the coaching will be better, and they're going to push for that division, Mike, and they're going to be a wild card, but they're not going to win that division. I'm going to pick the Texans to win it.
All right, that one should be a fun battle there because the Texans go in now with pressure, which is what Jacksonville had last year. Let's creep up to the top 10, number 11. You like the Jets here.
Well, Aaron Rodgers, listen, it was an absolute nightmare. They went through 5 starting quarterbacks last season. That can't happen. That was a bad job there by not having a qualified backup. I know they wanted Zach Wilson to make it. They missed on that. Their offensive line was not good enough. They missed on that. Great defense. Joe Douglas has drafted an incredible defense. They got to get the Hassan Reddick contract situation straightened out. The receiver, they have no receiver depth at all. That's a problem. Alan Lazard, $10 million fully guaranteed this season. That's why they didn't cut him. It's the only reason. Their depth in the offensive line is going to be better. Joe did address it. He made a lot of moves on the offensive line. They're going to be much better, obviously, with Aaron Rodgers back. If Rodgers plays 14 out of 17 games, Mike, they're going to win that AFC. So they're my 11th team, and you have a qualified quarterback, you're going to be a good football team.
An interesting one here because number 10, they thought they didn't have a qualified quarterback, so they went out and got a guy that somebody else thought was qualified, and he wasn't qualified enough in Denver. But now Russell Wilson's in spot number 10, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I struggle with this one, but the roster, boy, this is hard to do. They've completely rebuilt their offensive line in 2 seasons. Starting in 2023 and now in 24, they have 5 new starters. Their best offensive linemen last season, they graded Isaac Seumalo, their left guard, as their best. They're going to have a new center in Zach Frazier from your school, West Virginia. Broderick Jones is going to move from right to left. Troy Fatano is going to be the right tackle. James Daniels won't have to play center. I know I'm told they were considering it, but he's going to play right guard. They got Roman Wilson, who they like. George Pickens is a breakout player. That they know they need to add a receiver. They'll look to do that by training camp. Great running game. They've reshaped their secondary. I'm a little bit concerned about their cornerback depth. That's certainly an issue. They brought Patrick Queen in. Really good front, Mike. This is a really good football team. But this division is so good, it's going to be hard for them to make it. But the Steelers are my 10th team, and they're going to be a good football team.
I was a little surprised by that one. Let's see in the top 10. We go to number 9, the third team from the AFC North. This time it's Cleveland. New quarterback situation there.
Yep. All right, so there's only one issue for this football team. It's the quarterback. Deshaun Watson has not played good football since 2020. He's coming back from major right shoulder surgery, but the roster, the offensive line is really, really good. They know they had to add another receiver. They did that. Jerry Jeudy, they paid him. They're going to go with more 11 personnel, which means 3 receivers, 1 back, 1 tight end. Nick Chubb, their star running back, coming off of a devastating knee injury. They addressed it. Brought in Dante Foreman. Jerome Ford was a good backup. Kevin Stefanski, by the way, their head coach, 2-time Coach of the Year. 2 out of 4 years there, Mike. That's pretty remarkable to me. Went to St. Joe's Prep here in Philly. Defense under Jim Schwartz, really, really good last season. All 4 starters back in the secondary. They've got a deep secondary. I ran into Rodney McLeod at the Super Bowl. He told me he was coming back. He did. He's back. He'll be a backup this year at safety. Jordan Hicks had a great year for the Vikings, believe it or not. Not many people talking about it, but he graded out very well, talking to the Vikings about him. But he signed with the Browns to start at middle linebacker. Great front. This is a really good football team. But the reason why I don't have him higher than 9, Mike, simple. Quarterback has not played well since 2020. He's got to play at least average to above average football for them to get in the playoffs. They got enough around him. He's just got to get the job done.
All right, going up to number 8, they just made a couple signings to the UFL. They went to the UFL League, Dallas did, to try to help out that roster. But you like them at number 8.
Yeah, the Cowboys at number 8, Mike. You worry about this. What if they get off to a bad start? Talking to coaches over the years, they always worry when they're on the last year of their deals. The way I understand it is all the assistants, including McCarthy, are on short-term. No, not all of them, but a lot of them are on deals that are going to expire this year. I doubt that. I can't imagine Brian Schottenheimer's, who's their OC. He doesn't call the plays. McCarthy does. But I'm sure Schottenheimer's contract goes more than 2 years. Usually that's what happens with coordinators. But McCarthy is not signing an extension. This is it. He's a lame duck coach. They better get off to a good start, because you don't want these players to start tuning the guy out if they know that he's on the final year of his 5-year deal. Depth at receiver is a problem. Dak's coming off a good year. Yes, the playoff game was terrible. Was it just his fault? 2 new starters on the offensive line. That does worry me a little bit. Defensively, where's the pass rush? They're going to have it, obviously, with Parsons as a stud, but is DeMarcus Lawrence, does he still have it? At 32 years old, he's had a lot of injuries in his career. The secondary, their best corners coming back from ACL reconstruction, Terry Von Diggs. They're revamping their secondary a little bit, but still going to be pretty good. They're a good team, but I worry about all the stuff that's around them. I've got the Cowboys at 8.
All right, let's go into the 7th spot. This team has a lot of pressure on them, man. They added a lot of talent, but you go from a team that people thought were going to win 4 games, you sneak up on everybody. You still like the Houston Texans, number 7.
Mike, so here's the thing, right? Here's the thing with the Texans. Nick Caserio, and I buried the guy for a couple of years because he missed on a lot of personnel decisions. He went with, if you thought the Eagles went cheap last year in free agency, that's all he did. The first couple of years, he went cheap, and then he went on a spending spree the last 2 years, but he also drafted extremely well. I'm going to give people credit when they do a good job. Caserio, who came over from New England, has done a great job the last 2 years. D'Amico Ryans was phenomenal. Bobby Slowick, their OC, had never even been a position coach with anyone. What a great job he did. Matt Burke, who's a Jim Schwartz protege, is their D coordinator. They've drafted well. Their offensive line, they finally got it right. They have depth. They're relatively young. They're really gifted there. Mixon was a major upgrade a running back over Dameon Pierce. Their defense has been completely redone the last 2 years. Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson will be their edge rushers. They've redone their secondary. I love this roster. Mike, I checked it. The books last year had them from anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5 wins. And believe me, I had them. I like the under one with Scott Farrell. I like the under 5 last year. I got that one wrong the year before. Who did I get wrong? Under 5, the Jacksonville Jaguars. It shows you nobody knows.
All right, yes, that's so many times where you're just like, I have no idea how this team went from 4 to 10. They won the division with 10 wins last year. Adam Caplan, football at 4. Moving to the top here, we're at number 6. It's the 4th team from the AFC North. How about the Baltimore Ravens?
I mean, you convinced now how good this division is? I mean, it's amazing. Now, the reason why I don't have them higher, Zach Orr, the defensive coordinator, is 31 years old. His career got cut down, I believe, to a neck injury. He was a linebacker. Really smart guy. Talk to people who know him. But he's never called plays before. This is a big deal. Mike McDonald is now the Seahawks head coach, who did a phenomenal job. This is, look, you just don't know, but Todd Monken's second year with Lamar Jackson as his offensive coordinator. John Harbaugh's a phenomenal head coach. Their offensive line's going to have a couple challenges. I'm a little bit worried about it. They're fine at receiver. They could use more edge rusher help, but it's more about scheme with them rather than having talent. Back end is really good. They addressed their cornerback position with Nate Wiggins, their first-round pick. They have some question marks, but Lamar, look, he's terrific. Derrick Henry is the big one, Mike. I can't wait for this one. Like, are they going to have Lamar run as much? Who knows? But it's going to be fascinating to see how that fits in. The Ravens are number 6.
Top 5, here we go. Adam Caplan's top 5. Oh, I think a lot of pressure on this team, too. Green Bay, another team. Not a lot of expectations, and now they have them.
Mike, so what I did is I asked some friends who are in personnel what they thought of both the Eagles and the Packers. I'm basically waving the flag with Jordan Love. I'm so in on Jordan Love this season. I'm just blown away with the way no quarterback was better in the second half of the National Football League last season by tape. Talking to people in pro personnel around the NFL, he's phenomenal. They have the best young receiver core in the National Football League. They're also the deepest. Not a great offensive line, but it's adequate. They're going to have Josh Jacobs now at running back, who's an upgrade. Defensively, new scheme. Jeff Hafley, the former Boston College head coach, he's only been a D coordinator once in his career. That was at Ohio State. He was a co-coordinator for 1 year. But they're going to change their scheme. Their defense had underachieved for years, Mike, under Joe Barry. They've revamped their secondary, 2 new starters at safety. They have to be better at corner, Mike. They've got good pass rushers. This is a really good football team, but I don't have them higher than number 5.
Yeah, that one's going to be fun. That division's going to be really interesting. Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago's getting a little buzz right now. Chicago went out and got a lot of weapons on that team. All right, let's get into the top 5. You got Green Bay 5. Philadelphia is number 4.
Yeah, so the difference here is the experience of coordinators. Vic Fangio, one of the best of the last 25 years. He's done a lot with a lot. He's done a lot with not a lot. I mean, he's pretty amazing. The job that he's done when he hasn't been given a lot of talent, if you just go by talking to people who've worked with him, guys as Savant, as a couple people have told me, he's amazing. Now he gets to run. The Eagles get to run his scheme with the real Fangio. Michael Clay has really risen his star here. I mean, it looked bad 2 years ago. Or 3 years ago, and better 22, but now they really took off their special teams units, Mike, as you know. Kellen Moore's really, really good as a coordinator. Unfortunately, he lost so many players at receiver. Couldn't run the offense, as I'm told, by people close to him the way he wanted, but he will here, as long as nobody gets hurt. Barkley's an upgrade, major upgrade at running back. I'm going to buy in that Hurts will be better this season. I'm a little concerned about the 2 offensive line changes. I'm concerned about no Kelsey. I'm concerned about no Fletcher Cox. Don't underestimate that loss of Fletcher Cox. We don't talk enough about that. I'm very bullish on these upgrades at secondary and how they're going to get younger. Well, they have more competition in inside linebacker. Are they any better? That remains to be seen. This is a good football team. I believe the coaching will be way better on the defensive side. Do not underestimate the upgrades, not only with Fangio, but his assistant group, including Clint Hurtt is phenomenal as a defensive line coach, Mike. It's a toss-up between Green Bay and Philly. I'm going to bet on the coaching staff, and I'm going to go with the Eagles at 4.
All right, they are 4, and that means number 3 It's Detroit. The Lions sneak in there ahead of Green Bay in the NFC North.
Mike, I'll tell you what, going into the offseason, if the Lions lost Ben Johnson, I was out on the Lions. Well, he's back. I didn't expect that. He was my number one head coaching candidate. He was definitely around the league. There was no debate about that. But it didn't work out for him in Washington. He didn't want the job. He backed out. They've got conflicting reasons why, but he's back. Aaron Glenn's back, who's done a really good job as a coordinator. Dave Phipp, former Eagles special teams coach, is there. Hank Fraley does a great job hunting buns. You might remember him as an offensive lineman. Hank's the best. Jimmy O'Neill's from Philly, who's DB's coach there. They're really well coached, one of the best coaching staffs in the National Football League. They had to rebuild their secondary at corner. They've done that. Brian Branch will be a starter. Terrion Arnold, the first-round pick. They traded for Carlton Davis, the Bucs former best corner. They need one more pass rusher. I didn't like the signing of Marcus Davenport. Marcus Davenport's been hurt a lot, but outstanding offensive line, one of the top three. Great offensive scheme, great coaching. They're my number 3 team. It's amazing to talk about the Lions in top 10 of anything, but they're really, really good, Mike.
They are. I agree with you there. And then the 2 is the defending Super Bowl champions. Even though they're the best, you have them at number 2.
Yeah, and they're going for 3 in a row, first time ever. Look, I said this with Scott Farrell. We did the segment on TV, and we had to do a real quick one. I said, look, it's real simple. You got to look at everything when you evaluate a football team. It's not just one particular thing. The coaching with Andy is great. As long as him and Mahomes are together, they're going to be an elite team. I don't like all the off the field stuff. That does worry me slightly. The receiver core, they're going to finally get some speed, but Xavier Worthy might have been overdrafted. I don't understand what the Bills were thinking, though. Making that trade with the Chiefs, their arch nemesis, that was kind of bizarre to me. They got Hollywood Brown, I'm a big fan of. Rashee Rice is going to wind up being suspended for how long, we'll have to see. Defensively, great coaching by Steve Spagnuolo. There's some questions in their secondary at corner, Mike. Remember, they traded their best corner to the Titans because they didn't want to pay him. That does worry me a little bit, Mike. That's a big reason why I have the Niners at number 1.
Yep, San Francisco at number 1, and this is a team that obviously still loaded with talent, and you like them better than everybody.
This is the NFL's most talented roster. The only issues they have, and they've gotten away with it, is the interior of their offensive line. It does worry me a little bit. They addressed it a little bit in the offseason. The receiver core, they're super deep now. In fact, you have to wonder how they're going to make Brandon Ayuk happy because they're ways away from getting extension done. Not ruling it out by training camp, but they're not there yet. Defensively, they drafted Renardo Green. I know they're very high on him, and it's a second-round pick. I really thought they'd go for corner in the first round. So corner, they're still not great opposite Shavarius Ward, who's really good. Great front, really good coaching, great schemes, Mike. They're the deepest team in the National Football League. They're my number 1 team.
There you go, Adam Caplan's top teams in the NFL as we get to the offseason here after OTAs, mini camps, his first power rankings of the season based on a whole bunch of things: roster, depth, offensive, defensive scheme, the quality of coaching. San Francisco, Kansas City, Detroit, Philadelphia, and the Packers are your top 5. One team that was not in that top list there that I thought was kind of interesting that I think might be in there is the Rams. I think the Rams are better than people think this year, but we have all offseason to kind of think about that. Adam Caplan's back on Friday for Football at 4. Thank you, Adam.
Mike, and Friday we'll talk about the teams that did make it. That's actually a great subject. Good one. We'll talk about that Friday.
Good stuff. All right, Adam, we'll be back on Friday. And, of course, check out the Inside the Birds podcast on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds, of course, and get their YouTube content, including Football at 4.